Merry Christmas. Well, it's probably not quite Christmas yet, but today I'm gonna run you through how I would cook a Christmas dinner. So I'm gonna start cooking at 10 a.m. We're not gonna change the clock, this is gonna be real life. Dinner is gonna be on the table at 3 p.m. We're gonna film this quite differently. We're not gonna start and stop it. We're not gonna make sure stuff's perfect. And I'm gonna run you through each step by step. We've got about 7 different dishes to cook, the classics. I've got a few tips and tricks throughout this to try and accommodate for all kitchen types and stuff that you can do ahead of time if you want to, because no one really likes to stand in the kitchen all day on Christmas, so everyone else is having fun. Anyway, let's get stuck in. So we're gonna do roast beef, roast chicken, roast potatoes, Yorkshire puddings. We'll do some stuffing for the chicken too, some glazed carrots and some Brussels sprouts and gravy, of course. So this is the beef that I've chosen. It's a boneless ribeye. You can do it with the bone on it as well. The reason I like to do it without the bone, while I think the bone adds flavor and protects the meat, without the bone makes it much easier for carving. This started yesterday. I took the beef out of the packet, dried it off really well. I trimmed up a little bit of the fat, but I really didn't need to take much off it at all. I'm gonna cook this for a long time, so it should have enough time to render down. You just need to make sure you don't have any like heavy silver skin or hard fat on there. I trust it, and then I seasoned it really well with salt. I put it on a tray with a rack, and I placed it in the fridge and left it there overnight to what we call dry brine. Now we're gonna make a little rub to go over the top. So really simply, in a bowl, we're gonna add some seeded mustard. You could just use Dijon if you wanted to as well. I kind of like the seeded stuff. Rosemary, 2, oh actually those are big sprigs. We'll go 2. And we're just gonna roughly chop that. And the rosemary goes. Garlic. I'm gonna do 7 big cloves. Oh, I'm already behind. I'm not used to being held accountable for my timing. Finally grate that garlic into there. This little marinade is one of those things that you could definitely do the day before. More time with family, or not. You know, maybe you want a reason to not spend time with your family. That's also relevant. Good glug of olive oil. I'm gonna say that's 3 tablespoons. And we don't really need any salt. This has been brine, so it's covered in salt already, so we don't need any more salt in there. I'm gonna mix that together, and I'm gonna use a glove for this because otherwise my hands are gonna really stink like garlic. Put that paste all over our beef. The oven is set to 120 degrees Celsius, which is 250 Fahrenheit. And we're gonna cook this till an internal temperature of 46, because we're after a medium rare finish. I'll list down the recipe what temperatures to cook it at other levels I've done this. I reckon at this oven it's gonna take about 3.5 hours, hence why we need to get this on. And then we're gonna rest it for half an hour before we crank that oven back up to 250 to get good color on it. So in it goes. Now the only other thing I'm gonna do is put some water in the bottom of that tray, which I need to get behind Mitchell to do. So just by adding this water, it's gonna stop all those nice bits sticking for 1. 2, it's gonna keep humidity in the oven, which will help without your beef drying out. In that goes. We'll start checking that at about 2 hours really. Okay, Yorkshire pudding mix. This is definitely one of those things you can do the day before. Super simple recipe. 1 cup in volume of eggs, bang on, which for me was 5 eggs this time. In that goes. Oh, why do I always make a mess when I make Yorkshire pudding mix? The same volume in milk. And if you were smarter person than I am, you would have done the flour first, otherwise you can have flour stick to your measurement cup. The same amount of volume in flour. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt, big pinch of salt, 2 and a bit, and we're gonna mix it. Now I'm gonna use a stick blender. If you don't have a stick blender, you can just use a whisk. The reason we made this so early is you want to rest this in the fridge. This is why you can make it the day before. And we'll cook it probably around 2 o'clock, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, next cab off the rank, we're gonna make a stuffing for our chicken. Don't have to make stuffing. You can just shove some lemon up there and some herbs, but I like stuffing. I've got some bread here. I got this whole packet of streaky bacon. I'm gonna cook this whole packet now, not because I need it all for stuffing, but I'm gonna need it all throughout the day. I'm gonna use it in the Brussels sprouts as well. There's no point doing something twice. I like streaky, smoky bacon for this type of thing. The fat content's better, and fat is flavor.
Last week you were talking about calories, and now
it's Chrissy, Mitchell. No such thing as calories in Chrissy. Okay, super simple. We're just gonna cut it into pieces like that big. It's gonna render down pretty far anyway, but I will suggest that you break it up rather than trying to do it in the pan. If you don't have 2 ovens, I suggest that you don't do 2 hot proteins. I think it's too hard to try and time it all at the same time. If you have an oven and a barbecue of any sort, you can do 2 hot proteins. If you only have 1 oven, I suggest you do 1 and do something like a ham, or just do 1. If there's only 4 of you for Chrissy lunch, I think 1 protein's more than enough. That clock's really loud, isn't it? Yeah. I feel really nervous. Usually it doesn't matter how long I take. Okay, pan on the heat. medium temperature, bacon goes in. That's a lot of bacon for that size pan. Add some water. Controversial. The water evaporates, helps to bring the temperature of the proteins up slower, then the fat renders out after. You usually get a better product. Okay, we're gonna toast our bread slightly before we blitz it. I think it's kind of better with older bread. You don't need to do this if you've got older, staler bread. This bread's kind of fresh, so we're just gonna toast it really lightly. Helps it blitz better. That oven's on 150, by the way. It'll probably take 10 minutes. While that's drying out, we've got some shallots, some sage, some anchovies, and some garlic. So we'll get these shallots sliced up, get the garlic ready. We'll chiffonade some sage. We'll use a metric ton of butter. Butter is flavor. Fun fact, stuffing you can make the day before. Run your knife through the garlic. This stuff's gonna get cooked down pretty fast, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. I really like sage and bacon and stuffing, but you can keep it like real simple, like onion and rosemary, like put dried fruit in there, some like, dried apricots is really nice. 10 leaves, chiffonade nice and fine. Sage is quite a strong herb. If you use too much of it can be pretty overpowering. Cool. Okay, so this is about 20 minutes later, and you can see all the liquid's gone and all the fat has rendered out, which is what we're looking for. What we're gonna do is pull this out. We're not gonna use it all for this recipe, but we are gonna use all that delicious bacon fat for our stuffing. We're gonna turn the element back on, kind of medium high, and we're gonna add our shallots and garlic. Oh, I'm dropping it everywhere. We're also gonna add some anchovies. You can leave these out if you're not an anchovy fan, but that doesn't taste fishy, trust me. I am an anchovy fan. Okay, so we're not gonna add any salt at this point. Obviously the anchovies are salty, all that bacon fat will be salty as well. And we're just gonna saute this down till they're nice and translucent. We don't want like heaps of color. Mush up the anchovies a bit, and then they'll dissolve into the shallots, which is what you're after. Scrape the bottom of the pan, get all that delicious bacon fond off there. We're gonna add some fresh pepper and about 100 grams of butter. I know it seems like a lot. This is not an everyday meal. It's Chrissy. Just let that butter melt down. Our bread, nice and lightly toasted. I'm just gonna go through and break it up with my hands. All right, this is looking pretty tasty. As soon as all that butter is melted and these shallots are nice and soft, and the anchovies are broken up, we'll get the bread in there and the sage and just start working it around. At this point, I'll turn your temperature right down low too. Okay, we're gonna add some of our bacon back, not too much. There should be plenty of bacon flavor in there anyway. And what you're looking for is kind of a soft bread consistency. You don't want super soggy bread, so that's gonna suck up all those juices from the roasting of the chicken. There's our stuffing done. Let's get this in this tray just to cool down a bit. We want this completely cool before we try and stuff it into our chicken. Stuffing done. If you've done that the day before, shove that in the fridge with your bacon overnight before you're ready to stuff your bird the next day. So we're an hour in. I'm pretty happy. I think we're doing all right. Potato. Now, this is definitely one of the things you can do the day before is peel your potatoes, leave them in the fridge in cold water. You can even do the boiling part the day before, then cool them down and then just roast them on the day. 200 to 250 grams per person, depending on if you want leftovers or how big eaters they are. You want a potato good for roasting. Google kind of what potatoes locally are and are easy to get that work well for roasting. Simply peel them, then we'll wash them. We're gonna dice them, and we want them all about the same size. I think that's a good size roast spud. The more sides these potatoes have, the better, because the more chance they've got of getting crispy. So into the cold water. You want lots of cold water, but you don't want more than that, right? Like the potatoes gotta be, make sure they're covered. But if you have more than that, all that's gonna happen is it's gonna take ages to heat up. Salt, big pinch of salt. Potatoes like salt, and they absorb it pretty well. Let's get that onto the stove to start boiling. Okay, roast chickies. I want these obviously ready by 3. I want them in the oven by 12. It sounds early, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna cook them slowly first, rest them well, and then finish them at a high temperature. So yesterday we made a 4% brine, half a liter of water in a pot with the salt, dissolve that over the heat, then I added the rest of the water with ice so that the temperature comes down. So when we put the chickens in, they're not going into hot brine. I put some peppercorns, some thyme, and some lemon in there. We left them in the brine for 24 hours. Pull these out of the brine, gloves, because raw chicken. Now, in an ideal world, this would have been a bigger container. You don't want the birds touching really ideally. But you can see that's firmed up a lot more, which is nice. Just make sure you get all these peppercorns and stuff off here. And if anyone asks, you can't really use this brine again. Out that comes. And the other one. The other thing I did do was take the wishbone out. You can do it now if you wanted to, but I'd be doing it ahead if I was you, because it makes it carving it way easier. So we're gonna pat the outside of these chickens as dry as we can get it, because if we don't, it's gonna, impede the skin getting crispy. We've also got you know, 45 minutes before these are going in the oven. So these won't go back in the fridge. They can stay out now, it's fine. I'm gonna grab our stuffing. When we're stuffing a cavity of a chicken, you don't wanna stuff the whole thing. You wanna leave a gap. If you stuff the whole thing, there's nowhere for the air to go and the top of the breast or the back of the breast won't cook. So get your stuffing in there and then just flatten it down into the bottom of the carcass. Don't feel like you have to use all the stuffing too. Push it in, get your hand right in there and push it straight into that cavity. There's still a lot of space in the top of that cavity. Once we truss this, there's gonna be a big gap in the top of that cavity. Let's get this other one done. Hand in, flatten down. Try and take all the excess bits of stuffing off the bird so it might just catch and burn. Then I'm gonna wash my hands quickly just so I can get some butcher string out, and we'll tie these up and I'll show you what to do with that to cook it as well. You just want one piece, bird down in the middle, okay, up over the wings and then down the two sides. Bring your legs together, cross them, wrap it around the leg a couple of times, back across and under, around the legs again, and tie. Nice and plump and together on the tray. And you can see the difference between those two birds. Untrussed, trust. I'm sure there's gonna be a butcher in the comments being like, that's not how you truss a chicken. And you're probably right. This is how I truss a chicken. Tuck the wings under, over the wings, across the legs, wrap the legs, bring them together. Around, around, back down, and tie. I did that two different ways. I'm just showing you options, guys. There you go, two beautifully trussed chickens. Exactly the same way. This is the whole thing with Christmas cooking or cooking at home. It doesn't have to be perfect. Practice it, find your way that works for you and go for it. And if you do it a different way and back to back, who cares? Me making excuses. All we're gonna do from here, we're gonna roast this at 150 degrees until we get an internal temperature of about 60, 65 degrees. Once we're at that temperature, we're gonna pull them out and rest them right until we're ready to, you know, like the last half an hour, we'll shove them back in a 250 degree oven to get color. All we need to do is put some water in the bottom of this. And then right before we put it in the oven, we're gonna drizzle a lot of olive oil over the top just to help that skin. While we're waiting for that to go in the oven, let's get this into some kind of little oven tray. And this won't take anywhere near as long as those chickens. It'll probably only take about half an hour. These are Dutch carrots, baby carrots, whatever you want to call them. And I like to roast them, but because of oven space, we're not gonna roast them. So we're gonna blanch them and then we're gonna finish them. We'll blanch them, cool them down, then we'll finish them, we'll glaze them with honey and thyme and stuff like that. So first of all, when you get them clean, I like to leave the tops on. And again, another thing you could do the day before if you wanted to. You can prep all your carrots, blanch them, cool them down, leave them in the fridge, and then you can just glaze them and reheat them on the day. If you can't find baby carrots as well, you can just do these with normal carrots. I would peel those ones though, and then I'd kind of just cut them into battens, maybe barrel cut them, and then the same process. You can keep this pay, make carrot top pesto. Oh, my mate Sammy Sweetheart used to make good carrot top pesto. I don't have time for that today. Check me spuds. When you put a knife into it, should feel a bit of resistance, but not too much. It's also important to stir it every now and then as well. Otherwise, potatoes at the bottom are gonna cook faster than the ones at the top. But before we take those out, we can kind of continue dealing with these. As I was cutting these, you notice that there's some quite big variances in size. So I'm just gonna split them up. You're looking at girth as opposed to how long they are, and just use your best judgment. So those ones we're gonna leave whole. These ones we're just gonna cut straight down the middle. Okay, we're gonna wash those, but I'm just gonna drain those potatoes first because I think they're pretty much ready. We've got a colander in the sink. Yeah, so they're effectively cooked, but there's still some resistance, which is exactly what you want. We're just gonna give them a last stir. What that's gonna do is help rough up the edges a little bit more. We're just gonna let these steam dry, and then we're gonna toss them, rough up the edges, and then they're good to go in the roasting pan when we're ready. We're just gonna take these to the sink to give them a good wash. So just cold running water and the nice clean chucks just run over the skin. There's often a bit of grit up around this part, which you can kind of pull off. In the restaurants, we would kind of take all that out with a turning knife, but honestly, I don't stress too much at home. So we've got some boiling water here, seasoned with salt. We're just gonna get our carrots in there, just to blanch for, I'm gonna say 6 to 7 minutes.
How are you feeling about the roast beef yet?
Ah, good mate. Don't forget to top up your water if it dries out. These are done, and what we're looking for is this is hot, them to be kind of soft, right? We don't want them like fully cooked. We just kind of take the bite off them effectively. Pull them out and into ice cold water. At this point, you can kind of peel these now as well if you really want to, which is what we always did in the restaurants, is that the skin just kind of comes off. It's really up to you. If you've got the time, then I kind of suggest that you peel them. It really doesn't take much time. It's 12 o'clock, well, it's actually 4 minutes past 12. I'm running late. I'm gonna drizzle these birds with some olive oil. Then I'm just gonna use a pastry brush to make sure it's evenly coated. You can also just use your hands. And remember, we don't need to put any more salt in these because these have been brined. So the oven's on 150 degrees Celsius. Brussels sprouts. Love Brussels sprouts. We're just gonna take the tops off, cut them in half like that. And like the carrots, this is another thing that you can do the day before if you want. Same as before, boiling hot salted water. These will only take about 3 minutes. We're not trying to cook them all the way through, just trying to take the bite off them. Check on this beef. 2 hours exactly, pretty much. Oh, it's looking good. Oh, it's gone faster than expected. We are getting there. Stunning. These are good to go. When you can kind of feel them and they just start to give a little bit, they're good to come out. You do not want to overcook these veggies at this point because they still have cooking to go. So I reckon that's half the reason most people are like, I don't like vegetables, because they ate overcooked ones. Just be careful with your sprouts too. They're basically mini cabbages. Avoid as many leaves coming off as possible, if that makes sense. We'll let those cool right down before we drain them really well. So our potatoes have sat there and they've completely dried up now, which is exactly what we want. Now what we need to do is to rough up the edges. You can just leave it in the colander and just toss it. You can be careful, you don't want to like completely bust them up, but the more fluffy bits on the outside, the more crispy bits you're gonna have on your potatoes. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna season them. Just a little bit, toss, little bit, toss. That's what you're looking for. All those crinkly bits on the outside, nice and seasoned, that's gonna make a good roast spud. Pull the ones out that are nice and fluffy and then continue to toss the ones that aren't fluffy enough yet. Oh, that's gonna be a goodie. There we go, ready to roast. Drain these sprouts really well. All the ice is melted, it's good. You wanna try and get as much water out of those as possible. Give them a shake, leave them in a bowl, then just kind of give them a shake every 2 or 3 minutes when you walk past them. Because all those little leaves kind of hold that water there. 20 to 1, we're on track. Time to make the gravy. Shallots, better than onions. If you can't get shallots, just use onions. I got roasted the last time I made gravy online because I didn't make it thick enough apparently. We'll make sure we make it thick enough today. Pretty simple. Shallots, garlic, carrot, celery. Slice your carrots, slice shallots, slice your celery, crush your garlic. You don't even need to cut it. And then we're just gonna use some rosemary and some thyme as well. To the pot, we're gonna need some fat to saute the veg. Now, I've got some tallow here actually, a bit more beefy flavor. Medium high heat and shallots in. Now we really, ooh. Let's pretend that made noise. Whoops. Make sure you get your pan to temperature first. So we're just gonna saute these onions. We want a decent amount of color on these as well. It's really gonna start bringing the flavor out. And I'm just gonna keep talking to the camera because I'm nervous about the fact that I didn't get my pan hot. Awkward. Bit of salt in there. Earlier than expected, but I am gonna pull that. It means we can rest it longer too. It's gonna tend to my shallots so that I don't burn. I've got a tray here so it obviously stays off the bench and doesn't destroy it. Now you're gonna rest this for, I mean, it's what time is it? Not even 1 o'clock. So we're gonna rest this for like a good hour, which is perfect. Stunning. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. See, we're starting to develop some color here on this pan, which is good. We're gonna get our carrots in next. Get some good color on those. Celery in. Celery is one of those veggies that's pretty hard to get color on, so I don't kind of stress too much. Happy with that. We're gonna get some tomato puree in here. Tomato paste, about 2 tablespoons. Get that stirred through. It's a flour now. Last time I used 1 tablespoon. This time we're gonna use 2 so people don't get mad. And a bit just in case. Watch, it'll be too thick now and I'll get angry. Stir that round, kind of similar to like if you're making a roux. There's not really that much fat left in there anymore, but you just wanna cook that flour out before you put any liquid in there. And the next liquid we're gonna put in here is a choose your own journey. Now I like to do a dark ale, like a dark beer in my gravy, but you can use red wine, or if you don't drink booze, use some verjuice. So I'm gonna use about half that bottle, so what, 375 to be exact. Now we're gonna stir that through, making sure you're scraping the bottom to get all that lovely fond off the bottom. If you do have trimmings, you can put those beef trimmings in with the onions as well. See, it's like a real thick paste. I know everyone was whinging about my gravy. Well, how is that? Is that thick? In goes the stock. That's a litre of beef stock. Bring that together, and we can always thicken this if we need to. Thin it out with some more stock. Once that roux or that flour starts to cook out, that stock should thicken up pretty quickly. You can let that simmer for like an hour. We've also got some aromats to put on there. Garlic, rosemary, and thyme. Just let that do its thing. It's 1 o'clock almost. And we're in a good space. I guess in the real world, people are showing up and all that stuff. So I think if you get to this point, you're at a pretty comfortable space. So we'll kind of lean on that, slow down a bit, and make sure we kind of nail these last steps. Our potatoes are cooked and they're ready to go in the oven at about 1:30. Our chickens are in the oven and they'll probably be coming out in half an hour. Our carrots are ready to go into the pan to get finished. That's a last minute thing. As are the Brussels sprouts, that's ready to go. Gravy's humming across nicely, just reducing slowly, and our beef is resting. So all we really have to do is finish the spuds, finish the beef, and I finish everything and put it all on plates. Pretty happy so far. And I think this is a good representation over here, Mitchell, of all this stuff that can all be done the day before if you want to. I prefer to do it on the day because where we have Christmas at the family house, it's, you know, it's a big open plan. So I like to kind of pot around and keeps me busy. But so far so good. All right, it's go time. Your auntie's had a few too many gin and sodas, so she's gonna yell at you if it's not ready on time. We've got an hour and a half left, just under. We'll call it an hour and a half because you can't want to be 10 minutes early, not 10 minutes late. Birds are ready. I just checked the temperature. Let's get those out and get those resting. Stunning. Now, they don't look super brown now, but that's okay. They're gonna go back in the oven. We're just gonna let those rest for a bit. The breasts are actually about 70 degrees, but inside the inner thighs, they were about 62, 63. They will carry over cooking and they're gonna go up another 4 or 5 degrees easily, and then they're gonna go back in the oven. We're gonna do the beef and the chicken at the same time, and we're gonna crank this bad boy up to 250, maximum, full power. Gravy's on. Now, if you've only got one oven, you only do one protein, so at this point, your protein will be out resting. You're gonna do your potatoes and your Yorkies. Once they're done, you're gonna pull them out, you're gonna flash your meat, finish that, pull that out and carve it. While that's carving, you put your potatoes and your Yorkies back in the oven just to flash them to get hot, okay? First things first, we need to get these potatoes going. So we have a tray, it's been preheating, and we have some beef tallow. We're gonna get that into there, fair amount of it. Put that tray back in. Now, another tray with a muffin tin. In that goes. Have another tray underneath it. This one's probably a bit small, should be a bit bigger. It's Chrissy, you always run out of dishes at Chrissy. Now we're gonna put the same beef tallow, a little bit, in each of these muffin tins. You can use duck fat for this, peanut oil if you don't wanna use animal fat. Yeah, any high temperature oil. I like beef tallow, I think the flavor works a lot better. So we want that oil really hot. So what we're gonna do is because the potatoes are gonna take longer than the Yorkies. So once that oil's hot in the potato tray, potatoes go in, oven gets shut again for another 10 minutes, get that nice and hot again. Then we open the oven again for that oil to get back up to the temperature of the Yorkies. We'll pour the Yorkie pudding mix in. We don't need to start the veggies just yet. They're a real last minute thing because you want them piping hot, and they're pretty easy. We're gonna do the carrots in one pan, the sprouts in the other, garnish them, bosh. This is a real timing game now. Our oil is hot now. Be very careful. I find it easy to take it out of the oven because all that's gonna happen is you're gonna leave that oven door open and it's gonna cool everything else down. Get our potatoes, in they go. That's what you wanna see. You wanna see a little sizzle when you put them in. Daz is setting the table, getting ready for Chrissy lunch with the team. So if you can hear some background noise, that's what that is. Remember, these have been seasoned, so we don't need to stress about that now. These should be pretty much good to go. The oven's set to 200 degrees Celsius, by the way. And these are gonna take about 45 minutes in the oven to get them nice and golden. Roll them over once, and all that is just to make sure that you've got hot fat on all sides. Then we're gonna get them back in the oven, and we'll let that oil of the Yorkies get really hot. It's really important, careful, really important that the oil for the Yorkies is extremely hot. In they go, Yorkie time. So we've got our mix out the fridge. We're just gonna give it a little mix just to make sure it's all nice and even. Okay, that's good to go. So I'm just gonna pour this mix in here. I think it's actually a bit safer. We shouldn't be carrying hot fat around the kitchen. When we pour Yorkie mix in, need to go right in the center, just like that. Fill it up till the fat goes to the top. Stunning. It's 2:15. We really want the food starting to go to the table at 10 to 3. So we're gonna get this meat in. That's gonna take about 15 to 20 minutes to get nice and brown. We'll take that out, and then that will give us like a good 15 minutes to carve it. While that meat's in there, we can start getting the veg hot. We've got our potatoes and our Yorkies, they're pretty close to coming out, so we're all on track. So this oven's on 250. Let's get this meat in. Don't forget our little extra stuffing. We've flipped these Yorkies once, they're pretty close. You can see it's pretty uneven oven, so make sure the bottoms are cooked through. So they're close to coming out, but not quite. Potatoes are looking good, but they won't take long once they're done. You can leave those in there for the time being. Okay, we're gonna start with these veg. Olive oil for both. Get the pans hot before we put our veg in. Okay, oil shimmering, let's go carrots in. Now, it's worth mentioning, there is too many carrots in that pan. In a restaurant, you would get slated for doing that, but this isn't a restaurant. Because at home, we've only got so many pots and pans. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Sprouts in, season with salt, thyme, bacon, butter. Meat's looking good. Yorkies are close. Potatoes will be right at the end. It's pretty clear these ones on the outside are cooking faster, so we'll move some of the center ones to the outside. Our gravy's ready. We just need to pass that and it's good to go. But we'll do that last minute so it stays nice and hot. Birds are looking good. Beef's looking good. 20 past. We're on track here. If anything, we're a little bit early. Dare I say it. Watch me stuff something up now. Okay, the Yorkies, we're just gonna flip upside down just to make sure those bottoms are cooked nicely. Probably should use tongs. Stunning. They won't need much longer. I'm gonna pull this extra stuffing out. Look at this boof. That's getting close. So we're not putting the sugar on any of this stuff until quite late, because once you put the sugar on there, there's a good chance that it does start to catch. Chickens are coming out. Okay, our veggies are pretty close. Drizzle of honey on our carrots. Be real careful at this point because the sugar content will catch quickly, and a good squeeze of lemon juice. Just kind of let that work its way through and glaze those carrots nicely. Drizzle of maple over the Brussels sprouts. Same thing. Yorkies are ready to come out. Yoo. Stunning. Stunning. Just let that chill out for a second because I don't want to destroy my fingers. But in the meantime, we can plate the carrots. A little bit of chopped parsley. Leave the thyme in there. Just If you have to tell your guests not to eat the time, they probably had one too many mimosas for breakfast, so stunning. A little bit more parsley for good luck. Don't know why that's good luck. Carrots are done. Let's go over the sprouts. Same as before, we'll get some parsley in there. Spoon these out. Sprouts are done. Time to carve our chickens. I'm gonna put a glove on for this. Helps with the really carving the hot food, and also means you don't have a super chickeny hand. Now, the good thing about the stuffing is that all that beautiful liquid should be soaked up by the stuffing. Okay, so we're gonna take our legs off first, and I split the legs down the middle, so you have a drumstick and a thigh, just like that. Take the breasts off and cut through that wing joint, and I cut the breasts into 3. Leave the wing on. Now we're gonna get this stuffing out, and we're actually gonna put that onto another separate plate. Let's try and scoop that out. I'm gonna keep this carcass, pick the meat off it, make soup out of it. Let's clean this board up before I attack this other one. All right, it's time for la bouffe. How did Andy do? Let's see. You cut this as thick or as thin as you want, but given that there's 2 proteins, you probably wouldn't go too thick. That's pretty good. If you did it even slower, so you could actually turn your oven right down to like 80 degrees even, and did it even slower, and you're gonna get more of like that perfect pink all the way through. You won't get this gray band around, but it just takes a lot longer, 5 or 6 hours as opposed to kind of 3. So I kind of go halfway and then put that down, and then the other half so that you get a nice pink bit at the front. Some rosemary. Roast before 10-2, I may have nailed this. And last but most definitely not least, the spuds. Crispy, fluffy, and whatever you do, don't throw out this oil that's in the bottom here. You can still use that. Just keep it in the jar in the fridge. Push them to one end, let the oil drain down, and then stack them high. I probably should have made more potatoes. Just need to strain this gravy. Nice and thick gravy on the dot. So there you go, my take on the classic, I guess, Christmas roast lunch. Protein, veggie, your carbs, lots of thick gravy, you can't go wrong. So realistically, that took me literally from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. and we are ready to eat. And I think there was probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours of downtime in there. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We will be back before then. Obviously the vlogs are still going, and the Christmas leftovers video will come out on Christmas Eve, so check that out then. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you're taking anything from it. Subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you on the 24th for a leftovers video. Peace. Dinner's ready!
No one's broken food yet.
I gave you small plates.
One's spicy, one's spicy.
You got number water there.
Yeah, it was potentially not going to make it into the shop, so it's literally tap water.
Okay.
We don't drink.